Alright, welcome back. So, since the last time, I did change a lot with this ship and I did get better modules. I did also get better skills, and the first thing that you will notice here is that my DPS almost doubled from the last time. It's now 258 from the original 140, and that is mostly because now I am using the Republic Fleet autocannons, which are a very nice upgrade over the Mark V autocannons that I used in the first video. And these autocannons do work very well, and I will also get the officer modules very soon, and it will be interesting to see how the officer modules will perform. Now, besides this, I also did tweak the medium slots, and of course I did change the low slot modules. In the medium slot, I did change from the Webifer into a Nosferatu because I did also remove the capacitor battery from the low slot. And to compensate for the lost capacitor battery, I did have to put two Nosferatus to replenish my capacitor in a similar way as with the capacitor battery. But this time around, I'll be dependent on the enemy ships that have capacitor. And I also have to keep in mind that these Nosferatus will use the capacitor of other ships if they have more energy than I have. For the low slots, I did now fit a gyro stabilizer because that does increase the damage output of the ship, as you will see later. I think it gives me a decent 100 DPS once it's active. I also do have the invulnerability field, and I have the shield booster, and I did also get a Republic Fleet afterburner, since this ship is very fast and I do want to take advantage of its speed as much as I can. And this is also a very nice upgrade over the Mark V afterburner that I was using. And the ship now gained at least a 20% speed bonus, which is really nice. And now the ship is faster than it was before, which means I can also approach targets faster, orbit around targets faster, and I can also disengage targets faster if I have to. Now this is a fit that focuses a little bit more on a balanced setting. Pretty much you can have decent DPS and you can have decent tank, which makes this fit excellent for PvE missions and for anomalies. Now my DPS is 325 and the resistances are also higher than they were before, because now I have better skills and now the fit is a lot more balanced. And it will be time to test out this fit and this ship in combat. Now so far I have to say that the ship worked very well. I didn't run out of capacitor, the resistances worked really well, and the overall DPS of the ship is quite higher than in the first video, and it is actually a lot better than in the first fit that I did. And this setting that I currently use for this ship is my main ship for missions at the moment, my main ship for anomalies, and so far it does a very good job. Now, of course, since I do use autocannons and I do use projectile weapons, I need to make sure that my primary targets are going to be frigates, because the frigates can be very dangerous if they come too close. Although I do have now decent tracking and I do have better skills for the autocannons and for the cannons in general, and that means I also have better tracking, and since these are Republic Fleet autocannons, they're also significantly better than the Mark V's that I was using before, and that means targets will go down very easily and faster than in the first video. Now, the Nosferatus have a effective range up to 8 kilometers, so that means I have to orbit around these ships at around 8 or under 8 kilometers to make the capacitor transfer rate efficient. And like I mentioned before, I do need to target the big ships to make them a target for the Nosferatus in order to make my capacitor recharge, because if I enable these Nosferatus on a, for example, cruiser or a destroyer, then their capacitor will run out very quickly, and once their capacitor is actually lower than mine, then the Nosferatus will stop transferring energy. So to compensate for that, I have to target the bigger ships, the cruisers or battle cruisers, and I need to use the Nosferatus on them to make my capacitor live. And I usually orbit around these bigger ships, and I use the Nosferatus on them, while I focus on the smaller ships with the drones and of course with the main weapons, which is so far working really well. I do like how this ship is working, and I definitely want to add a faster capacitor recharge, and I would want to go with a faster ship, which means that I will have to change the rigs a little bit. Mostly the engineering rigs, since my weapon rigs are mostly for tanking, for EM and thermal resistance, and I do like the layout of the weapon rigs at the moment. But of course I will have to change the engineering rigs to make the ship faster and more efficient in combat. Now, this fit, I did test most of the missions with this fit, and I did not have any problems in clearing most of the missions. I also did have a couple of the rare missions, and they were also very fun, and I cleared them very efficiently and very quickly. Didn't have to warp out, and the capacitor was very stable. Now, one thing that I need to change at the moment is the invulnerability field and the medium shield booster. I'll have to buy a faction invulnerability field, and I'll have to buy a faction shield booster, since while the Mark 5s aren't bad, they are barely sufficient to keep my shield stable in the active boost mode, and for that I will have to go and buy myself better shield boosters and better invulnerability fields. But you can also use the current modules with my current skills, which are also very high, and my skills are... I have most of the skills that are for the shields and shield boosting. I have them on max, both the skill for the item and of course the upgrade are almost, if not they're maxed out. And this fit also works on alpha clones as well as on omega clones, so it doesn't matter which clone you use, this fit will work and it will be efficient on both clones. Now, if I had a faction shield booster and a faction invulnerability field, then I would take a lot less damage and I would actually repair my shield a lot faster than I am repairing it right now. And of course, they would waste a lot less energy because of my skills. And so far, I'm melting those rats very quickly. And sometimes I do hit over 1000 with these autocans. Now, that is mostly because I do need a tracking computer instead of the gyro stabilizer, but I'll test that out in another video, since this time around I did focus on full DPS. And of course, I can also make a fit with dual gyro stabilizers, which will make the DPS even greater. But for that, I'll have to sacrifice one invulnerability field, and if I sacrifice that, then I will need to sacrifice either the shield booster or the afterburner, because I would need energy to keep the capacitor alive. Which, if I had two of these modules, they would absolutely destroy my capacitor if I enable all of them at once. But of course, I will test that out as well in one of the upcoming next videos. Well, on to the next mission. Now, I did mostly these tier 5, tier 6 and tier 7 anomalies, and in this case mostly tier 7 and tier 6 anomalies, because the tier 5 anomalies and tier 5 missions are actually... the tier 5 anomalies and tier 5 missions are actually easy, so that's why I decided to only go with tier 6 and tier 7 anomalies and missions, and in this case only tier 7 and tier 6 missions. I will be jumping on anomalies another time, since currently I am far away from my home system, since I am in low sec and I am in high sec doing these missions and testing all of these different ships out. So when I make a trip towards my home system, I'll definitely test out the tier 7, tier 6 anomalies as well, just to see how much will this ship be effective against those. But since this ship is already effective against these rats, I am sure that this ship can also be effective in those anomalies. Now, The Tier 7 large anomalies might be difficult, but I think the ship's maneuverability and the ship's speed, and of course the resistances, will keep the ship alive. So in order to verify that information, I'll have to make a trip towards my home system, and I'll have to do these anomalies to make sure that the ship can survive such a harsh environment with this current fit. Now, again, the best possible solution is to have a long-range ship, since long-range ships can shoot targets from long distances, and that makes them perfect for ratting in anomalies, since you can destroy the targets without the targets actually be even near you, and if they can't get near you, they aren't going to be able to hit you, and that makes long-range builds perfect for anomalies. Now, since this is a close-range fit and a close-range ship, I'm very curious to see how it will perform in those Tier 7 and Tier 6 anomalies. And not gonna lie, I'm kind of worried if I jump into a Tier 7 large anomaly, because the Tier 7 rats can hit very hard and there is lots of them. So the Tier 7s, when I think about it, might be a bit risky to do with this ship, with this current fit. Of course, mostly because it is a close range fighter, and it is a close range ship with close range modules. And a lot of these rats do carry Webifers, and they do carry neutralizers, and of course Nosferatus. So besides making your capacitor empty very quickly, they can also make your ship almost stationary in space from all of the Webifers. And if your ship is stationary, then it is a very easy target. And in these situations, I will have to test those anomalies out before I can make a conclusion on if this fit is good enough for Tier 7 anomalies. For Tier 6, I think I can manage, but for Tier 7s, I'll have to test that out. But in the end, I will test out all of these anomalies to see how this ship will perform, especially in nullsec. Now, one ship though that I am absolutely sure that can solo these anomalies without much of a problem is definitely the Caracal, since you can fit the Caracal with these long-range missiles, and that ship is also decently fast, it is not slow, and you can orbit around these enemies at around 40 or 50 kilometers with that ship. Very safe from their weapons, and if you're safe from their weapons, then you just have to take them out slowly, and then you just loot the wrecks and you get the ISK. While these ships that have a close range fit and that are mostly focused on close range combat might have a problem, so I will have to test that out to see how it will work. But so far for these missions, the ship is doing a very good job. Even the Tier 7 missions, the rare ones that can be difficult, are also doable with this fit and with this ship. And as soon as one of them pops up again, I will absolutely record it again, just to show you how I cleared them. And soon enough, I'll be also doing the storyline missions. But for storyline missions, I do need a long-range ship, and I do target the sniper tactical destroyers, because they do have a decent range, and their special module also allows for a greater range, if I remember correctly. So for the storyline missions, I'll definitely have to get a different ship, and I already have a goal to obtain. And since I already have a couple of the storyline missions waiting for me to complete them, I will record them when the time comes, and it will be fun. I also thought if I should record these missions, if I should live stream these missions, but I think I'll record them, because I don't know what to expect, since I'll be doing them for the first time. So it will be interesting to see how those missions will look like. And I am not going to engage those missions with a ship that has under 80 kilometer range with its weapons, since I don't know what to expect. I've heard that you will have to fight waves after waves of faction ships, and if I have to fight wave after wave of faction ships, then I definitely need to have a very fast ship that can shoot targets at a very long distance. And the And the sniper tactical destroyers, I think, are a perfect solution to that. So once I get one of these, I'll be jumping on the storyline missions immediately. And I think they're also going to be fun. And as I get to know these missions, I'll be also doing them with with a cruiser, and of course I'll be attempting to do them with other ships that are going to be specifically built for these missions. So I guess I'll have to do that eventually. So it will be interesting. Well, so far this ship is so far mostly effective against Caldari ships, since my resistance are the best against these missiles, and I had absolutely no problems at fighting these Caldari ships, since their weapons barely scratch my shields because of my resistances. But the ship types that do most damage to this ship at the moment are Amar ships, since I think my lowest resistances are on thermal. It's interesting that my lowest resistance, I think it is on thermal, and it is only like 40%. My EM resistances are like 50, so the Amar ships will be a challenge with this ship. I wouldn't recommend that you fight these without at least 50 or 60% of thermal resistance, since those ships can do a lot of damage and they can melt shields very quickly. I remember in the tier 7 anomalies that I was doing, the tier 7 Sancha anomalies, they used to melt my shield in like 3 hits, so without good thermal resistances, don't attempt to clear these Amar anomalies. And in order, and that can also be said for the other ship types and for the other classes of ships in the game. You will have to have decent resistances against most of these in order to efficiently complete them. And in my case, I am doing these missions very efficiently and without much of taking any damage. The ship's DPS is very nice. Of course, the DPS can only be better, and I think with the final fit that I have in mind, I think I can get around 600 to 700 DPS on this ship, which will be very interesting to test out, since I think I can actually manage to achieve that. And I am very curious to see how that will work and how that will look. Well, and I think this will be the last mission for the video. Again, I am also fighting these Caldari ships because for some reason the game decided to give me only Caldari missions for the vast majority of time being, and I was also trying to get I was trying to get the rare missions, but after all, they are rare, so I'll have to be patient, and when they pop up the next time, I am sure going to be recording them, and then you will see how I clear those missions with this ship. And I suggest that you buy all of these faction modules as soon as possible, because as time goes on they might become very expensive, and when they become very expensive then they might be very hard to obtain. So get the best modules as quickly as you can, and they will make the game a lot easier. Now, of course, you should also avoid dangerous situations that might potentially cause you to lose your ship, since if you lose these modules, it can be quite hard to replace them, since again they might be expensive at one point in the game. But so far everything is going very smoothly. I do enjoy this game a lot, and I am working to get other ships that I need and other ships that will help me to clear the storyline missions, which I think will be very fun and of course very, very challenging. And they also do give you a lot of ISK, which will be interesting since I do need ISK a lot, and I also have plans for a vast majority of ships, and also I do have a lot of projects that I want to try with all of these different ships in the game. I'm thinking to test all of the ships out, and for each of these ships to have a specific build and to have a specific role for every of these ships in the game. Well, so far the tactic that I'm using for ratting and for missions is working really nice. Now you have to keep in mind, you have to orbit very close to these rats if you want to use those Nosferatus, because above 8 kilometers the Nosferatus will not give you any capacitor from enemy ships, so you have to be within the range, and its optimal range is 8 kilometers. So stay within that range and you should be good with your capacitor. Now, I will also try this ship with artillery, since this ship does also have bonuses on artillery, and it will be interesting to see how effective are artillery against the autocannons on this ship. I personally like more the autocannons because they have a very fast rate of fire and they have very high DPS, but the cannons and the artillery will have greater alpha damage, which I'm curious to test out to see how much can they hit. And I think it will be interesting to see how much damage those artillery weapons can do on these rats. And so far, I do have more fun flying this ship than the Talvar, since the Talvar is using missiles and this ship is kind of a lot more fun to play. Well, with that being said, I hope this was helpful and I hope that you enjoyed. With that being said, stay safe, fly safe, and I'll see you next time.